Hey fam, it's TabbyWesa with another story time, and honestly, I'm half tempted to start calling it Tabby Tales or something silly like that. Leave a comment if you agree or if you have some sort of suggestion. Also, leave a like. Likes are nice. Um, the last video was pretty long, so how about for today I take it easy with something short and sweet, like how about we tell the story about when I was a kid and standing up to bullies was not only okay, but it was encouraged. See, I was a 90s kid. Though I was born in 1989, the majority of my childhood was spent in the 90s, along with some of my fondest memories before things got a little sour anyway. In the 90s and early 2000s, kids were mostly left to their own devices, with parents usually trusting us and that we would, follow whatever rules and guidelines they had set for us, and basically drilled into our little heads without us knowing somehow. But there were pretty basic rules like be home before dark or curfew, stay away from this and that place because danger, don't talk to strangers for obvious reasons, and don't play in traffic, also for obvious reasons. Just to name a few. Back then, we kids were smart. we didn't do stupid shit or just trust random people. I mean, some of us probably did. I mean, there were still incidents that happened, but they didn't seem to happen nearly as often as they do now, or at least they weren't reported as such. Anyway, I'm kind of carrying on already. But yeah, anyway, something I learned by watching a lot of the TV shows that were popular at the time, as well as a little bit of encouragement from my parents, because my parents, they were the kind of parents that, they wanted to keep me safe, but at the same time, they knew I would have to protect myself at some point. So they encouraged me to stand up for myself in any way I possibly could. And, I wasn't like some big buff girl or anything like that. I was kind of tiny compared to most of my classmates and whatnot. I was little and virtually harmless, despite my anger management issues at the time. But yeah, but anyway, something I learned growing up was that I shouldn't take guff from anyone. And I think this probably started when I was about 8, because I don't remember being any kind of brave before that. I used to be scared of a lot of stuff, like even certain Disney movies that had like moments of suspense scared me. Game over screens used to scare me. That's a whole other story. It's kind of funny, actually, in hindsight. Anyway, that was about the time when I was getting bullied the most, when I was 8. My parents had been divorced, and for some reason, that was just kind of something that, like, kids used to poke fun at me for, was because my parents were divorced, and their parents were still together. Yeah, I guess it hadn't become, like, super commonplace at that point. I don't know. But, something about having both your parents living under the same roof made them feel superior. But another thing I often got teased for, though, which actually bothered me slightly more than, poking fun about my parents and whatever, was that, I liked to play with boyish things, and I grew up being a bit of a tomboy. I liked playing with toys that were marketed for boys. I liked watching cartoon shows that were marketed for boys. I just found more enjoyment in those things. I liked action. And I think part of it had to do with my dad, because it was sort of like a way for me to bond with him. But, anyways, that's not what this story is about. At some point, I kind of got fed up with being a target and being picked on and, pushed around and told I couldn't play at the cool kids corner or whatever. Um, and I finally decided to just kind of take a stand. And that was when I started actually getting into fights. I call them fights, but really it was more like I was chasing the bullies down, eventually shoving them, and then, screaming in their faces. That was mostly what I was capable of at that age. And at some point, yeah. I never really started the fights. I didn't go out of my way to, like, target the bullies back. Usually it was whenever they were going after me, I would just kind of, like, go full psycho and just kind of screech and scream in their faces, chase them around. And, normally the scare factor was enough to, get them to back off. But as I got a little older, altercations started to become a little more physical. But yeah, it was funny. Before I had asthma, I could run near constantly. I could have been on a track team down the line if I really tried, but I wasn't really interested in that kind of sport. But yeah, I could chase my foes around the playground for a lot longer than they could run away. And yeah, when I caught them, I'd normally just kind of shove them down, and depending on what it was that they did to trigger me to that point, I'd either screech at them, or I would actually get down on them and start, like, attempting to pummel them. And I do say attempt, because again, I was a little being. I had skinny arms. I couldn't hurt anybody if I tried. Maybe a black eye, but nah. I was like the child equivalent or human equivalent of an angry chihuahua that didn't have any fucking teeth. Yeah, it was more about the scare factor than anything. It was usually enough to set them straight and leave me alone. Thankfully, the screeching and roaring that I was talking about, this was also around the time that Pokemon had just started becoming really popular in the States, and, like, everybody was, like, showing off their Pokemon cards or whatever. So at this point, everybody kind of knew about it, and they thought maybe I was just playing pretend, trying to, pretend to be one of these Pokemon. And sometimes I did do that. Me and my friends would, like, practice, like, Pokemon voices and stuff from the show. And yeah, and like I said, I wasn't exactly buff. I was puny. So, yeah, about as tough as a chihuahua, and it was really more about scaring the bully away than it was about actually beating them up, unless they really, really pissed me off. And it usually took a lot to get to that point. 6th grade came along, however, so I think I was, about 11 going on 12. Yeah, I was like, maybe, no, actually I might have already been 12 at this point. Man, the years are so weird. Anyway, so 6th grade came along, and it was a particularly interesting year. Year 2001 to 2002. Yeah, I mean, you might already see why that year was interesting. It was a good 20 or so years ago. But anyway, not only was I a little bigger, I was actually a lot more athletic and aggressive at this point, except when it came to, like, younger and smaller kids. Like, if they bugged me, I usually just kind of, like, told them to knock it off, and they'd normally listen. For 2 reasons. One, obviously I was a lot bigger than these little tiny children were. And 2, it was a lot more likely that they would actually come to me for help because they were being bullied. You see where this is going? I I kind of became a sort of defender for these little tots, for the little kids. Usually, second grade and younger. So, yeah, these kids looked up to me, and I had no problem acting as their defender. If somebody was picking on the little kids, I'd basically go right over there, do my shoving shtick, maybe chase the bully around a little bit, and, find some humorous way to humiliate them in front of these little kids as sort of like as a payback of sorts. It's too long ago, I can't remember exactly what type of things I would do besides, school them in the schoolyard. But I was kind of met with a dilemma because I was in the 6th grade, which meant I was going to be graduating to middle school. I wasn't going to be around to help these little kiddos anymore. But I had an idea. So on the final week of school that year, which was basically like, we had like a field day, or a field week rather, because every day we would do something different. Field day was basically, we play outside all fucking day. All fucking day. And, there were like different activities that we would cycle throughout the day. Take a lunch break and then, go right back at it again. Those were fun. Do people still do that? I mean, I know with COVID you probably don't, but like, does anybody remember field day? Is that still a thing? Man, you kids are missing out if it's not. That was fun. I think my favorite was always whenever the water balloons came out. Oh yes. Oh yes. 3-legged races. The parachute. The big parachute that we would like run under. That was awesome. I loved that shit. Anyway, so the final week of that, I kind of like, it wasn't exactly in secret because we were all outside, and these kids would basically gravitate towards me any chance they got. So, just because, all the big kids are out too, so they're kind of worried. Anyway, so everybody K through the 2nd grade, so kindergartners, 1st graders, 2nd graders, and I think even some of the 3rd graders, I kind of just, as they would gather towards me, and any other stragglers that I might have come across throughout the day, I would basically just give them the heads up of what was going on, saying, hey, after this year I'm not coming back because I gotta go to middle school. I won't be going here anymore. I gotta go to the bigger kids school. So I basically told them all that because I wouldn't be back, that they would have to stand up for and look after each other. And basically, stand up to the bullies together. And, told them to just look after each other. And don't take any crap from the big kids, And boy, did they ever. Holy shit. It was the next day, the very next day, some punk kid decided he was going to have one last hurrah, too, because he was also a 6th grader. Some punk kid decided he was going to pick on the little kids one day, kind of bullying them off the big toy, as we called it. Basically just the big old jungle gym and whatnot. And, he was just picking on this kid, not letting him play and go down the slide and whatever. So, all the other little kids saw this, they remembered what I told them, and what ensued was fucking hilarious. It was the coolest and funniest thing I had ever seen. So, okay. So, this one big kid, he's just kind of poking fun at this one little kid, and, she starts crying, calling for help, but before I can even so much as make a step towards that direction, because I was I would have gladly done it. All of the kids that were in that area just started piling up on him, slapping him around. Well, with their little tiny baby hands, just kind of smacking at him. And they were relentless. They did not stop until he was crying uncle and then ran off. And the whole time, I'm standing next to the recess monitor lady, who was more than familiar with my antics at this point. And she was laughing with me. That's right, I said with me. We were both busting a gut. She knew I had a hand in it somehow. Like, she even looked my way and was like, "You had something to do with this. I know you did. Because you're always hanging out with these kids, and now you're about to leave, and all of a sudden these kids are just like, yeah, you did something. You told them something, didn't you?" And I just told them to stand up for themselves. That's literally all I did. And she was impressed. She was impressed. Those kids looked up to me, and I couldn't leave them without words of encouragement, or at least inspire them, to stand up and, stand strong together and all that. That was like 19 years ago. Almost 20. That was June of 2002. And that was a hell of a school year, because everybody was kind of, the teachers were all tense because of 9/11, and, all us kids were like, wanting to be heroes and stuff, getting all patriotic and junk. And yeah, I guess that day, in a way, I was a leader at the age of 12. 12! And even then, I knew not to leave my little tiny troops without some sort of contingency plan. That was my contingency plan for them. To teach them to stand up for themselves. To encourage them. Let them know that they could do anything if they just stuck together. So why can't our president do that? This has been TabbyWesa. And remember to share this video, comment, like, and subscribe. The bell thingy will notify you of future videos on my channel. And thank you all for watching, and have a good day.